Americans who actually moved to Canada. How would you rate the decision and why? I left when I was 18. Lived there for 10 years. I've been back in the States for about 8 years. It was a great decision that gave me the best years of my life so far. I intend to move back. However, it isn't at all what my extremely idealistic and liberal younger self expected. There's this idea that Canada is like a liberal utopian version of the US. Hence the stereotype about moving to Canada when a Republican gets elected. Canada is not a utopia. There's poverty, racism, crime, and despair, just like everywhere else. Furthermore, thinking of Canada as a version of the US also fails completely, because it's very much uniquely Canada. My love for it is stronger now, because it stood the test of realizing that utopia doesn't exist, and because I discovered such profound and solemn beauty in nature, the people, the culture, and my own sense of isolation there. If we're being honest, I think of myself as half Canadian. I apparently speak with a noticeable GTA accent, even after all this time. It's difficult to really describe my relationship with the place, but thinking about it never fails to make me smile. My friend moved, reluctantly, to Canada because they didn't approve his visa renewal about a year ago. Now says it was dang blessing in disguise that it happened. They had some health issues and they are all taken care of pretty much for free. The only complaint he has is the cold climate, but he says the pros outweigh the cons by a large margin. Anyone that complains about winter, I answer with one thing: bugs. Half the year is bug free, the other half is filled with minor bugs, mosquitoes, spiders and basic critters. But the cold makes it impossible for most scary bugs to live here. Just moved to Ontario a few months ago. 2 really positive things so far. 1. I am amazed by how civil everyone is on the roads. People actually merge calmly and sensibly. Yeah, there are a few buttholes, of course, but generally speaking, the stereotypical niceness is real. 2. My husband broke a bone on a Saturday. We were at the hospital for less than a full hour before he was ready to go home. Total cost, no health card for us, was about $50. Not $50 copay and $250 bill for radiology later. Actually just $50. Even without access to the healthcare that Canadians get, it was still faster and cheaper than any hospital visit we've had in the States. Been here since 2002. I'm generally very happy to be here. People are kinder, less religious nutbas, more respectful in general. My son was born with rare disorder and we did not pay 1 penny for his NICU stay. After any baby is born, a nurse comes to your house to check on how things are going and will come back if you need a bit of help. Maybe this was because our child was more fragile. Friends in the States were blown away by this. Families get a child benefit subsidy based on income. Even moderate incomes get this extra $sign. Excluding healthcare, college hire, gas, food, booze, housing. Big discounts in shops, like bargain racks with 50-75% off stuff, are few and far between. Wages don't always keep up compared to US. I live in border area so I can always do some cross-border shopping. We have a housing crisis where I live, but at least here I feel there is political will to do something about it, unlike most cities in the US where they seem paralyzed by competing interest groups. It has always bothered me that in the States people who struggle in any way are looked upon as moral failures instead of a reflection of a failed society and in need of support. It has always bothered me that in the States people who struggle in any way are looked upon as moral failures instead of a reflection of a failed society and in need of support. Freaking men. If only the US government saw it that way. I moved to Canada 9.5 years ago. I'm now dual citizen. Us Canada. I definitely view it as a good decision. There are significant drawbacks that I don't consider lightly, but overall I'm happy and don't see myself going back to the US anytime soon. I have always put a lot of emphasis on the importance of family and friends, so being away from them is truly the biggest challenge and regret of the whole thing. But I have a wife and children now here in Canada and I can't imagine living in the US right now. I value the health and safety of my family and I truly believe we're better off in Canada. Just as a for your information, America expects all citizens to file a tax return, regardless of which country they live in. They will give some credit for taxes you pay to America, but there have been a lot of cases lately where dual citizens get massive American tax bills, above and beyond their Canadian ones, especially small business owners. I moved to Canada in 2011 from California and received my citizenship 2 years ago. I don't regret it at all. Of course the healthcare situation is nice. I've never had a problem getting the care I need. Most of all, people are a lot calmer, less religiously zealous, and there are fewer people who have gone off the rails due to their political beliefs. I honestly don't miss anything in the US. All the family I cared about in the US are now dead. I had no real job prospects until I came up here, and I married the love of my life here. 10/10. I moved here because of university, and that alone was one of the best decisions ever. I got Canadian citizenship from my father and my total bills for 4 years will be $20K for tuition. At my home state uni, that would be only 1 year. Healthcare is also neat to have. It still feels weird that I can go in for a minor thing and not be scared to rack up a lot of bills. Almost seems fake until I don't get that bill in the mail. I moved to Montreal, which I know, Quebec, but honestly, I prefer it to my hometown. As much as I complain about public transport every day, I wouldn't give it up since I have to admit it could be worse. My city in the US didn't really have any. Also the people seem nicer and more open to be friendly and start up conversations with you even if they are in a rush. I also love how much community sponsored event there are here, not just things from the church. Also since I moved to Montreal it's helped me strengthen my never practiced French and now I'm trilingual, though I know this is unique to my situation lol. Cons of course are the very high taxes, things generally being more expensive, etc. But I feel like I can live with that. It really isn't that hard once you become financially responsible and learn how to budget yourself. Overall, I love it. Life seems easier, like you get more opportunities because, opposed to where I lived in the States, everything isn't just about how self-made you are, but rather how we help each other get up. Well, I guess in my experience, I honestly hate having to go back home in the States and become homesick even after a week. Life just isn't the same and the people aren't the same. I love it up here. Montreal also has a lot of community initiatives to help people down on their luck or newly immigrated. Where I work, we do a free community lunch every week and we also run a food bank out of our building. Quebec has its issues, but Montreal really ain't that bad of a city. Wonderful. Have run into a few health problems since moving up here that would have left me bankrupt in the US. And, for the record, no, there is not a months and months wait to see a doctor here. There is no real longer wait than what you'll get in the US. Wanna know how easy it was to get my healthcare card? I walked into the non-government run registry place, waited maybe 5-10 minutes, showed proof of residence and my visa. They said, okay, here's your temporary card. A permanent one will be mailed out to you soon. And a few hours later I went out and used that temporary card with absolutely zero issues. Talk about no stress. Wonderful experience. Would definitely recommend. And we get to sit here and laugh at everything happening down there. I lean right on 75% of things. I work in healthcare. I've seen things. Making it more affordable is a must. And if using taxpayer dollars as more or less a giant government insurance agency is the way to do it then I'm game. No one should go broke for being sick. I moved from Florida to the central interior of British Columbia 17 years ago. Considering that I only get more liberal as time passes and I love the healthcare. 9/10 would do again. The only reason that it isn't 10/10 is because winters are balls but cold and summers can be smoky due to wildfires. Hey dude, that's on you. BC interior is rough. Love the place, but anytime it's not spring or fall, I am hesitant to visit. Oh neat. Something that applies to me. I moved from Memphis, Tennessee to Toronto 3 years ago, and the change has been like taking a breath of fresh air. In general everything just feels more comfortable and higher quality, and going to the doctor when I'm sick, instead of trying to ride it out, is just amazing. I only wish it were warmer, and that people won't ask me where I'm from so much because of my accent. LOL. This is the second best decision I've ever made, the first being marrying my Canadian girlfriend. Vancouver a hell of a lot warmer than Toronto, if you can live with ridiculous price of everything there. 10/10. I will never go back to live in the US. Looking at relinquishing my US citizenship, but that's like $2,500 plus. I moved here in 2010 at age 18. Met a really great guy. Later on we had 2 kids and one has a medical condition requiring 24 hours monitoring. T1D. Because of the medical care alone, I will never move back. I remember paying $40 copay, $2,500 plus deductibles, and that was on my parents' plan, which they paid an insane amount for. I also received maternity leave for a full year, both pregnancies, with a bi-weekly pay of $1,000-ish. I think the amount has increased. I'm not 100% though. I can walk into most clinics and get an appointment. The longest I've had to wait in the ER was like 3 hours. It was for severe flu, so not a big emergency, but I remember waiting 7 hours to get seen in Houston, so no big deal. People are way freaking nicer, but there are buttholes everywhere. Cannabis is booming. My spouse is a senior PM at a large LP and makes bank. Also, my favorite part, I had a co-worker complaining about immigrants. I guess she assumed because I'm white, I would take her side, and how they didn't pay taxes, didn't work, and just wanted to live here for free. I told her I was technically an immigrant and the look on her face was priceless. Frick her. Anyways, Canada is awesome. Move if you want. It's cold as frick, and I have yet to see a bag of milk. Bagged milk is apparently only an East Coast and Ontario thing. Everyone here is talking about how much better the healthcare system is. Can anyone give a story that doesn't involve healthcare? My stepmonster is American and moved to Canada. The biggest thing for her was when she moved in November and heard on the radio that there was a 10th murder. She freaked out when he realized that it was the 10th of the year in a large major city and not them 10th of the day like where she was moving from. IDK if I count here because I'm American Canadian. Received dual citizenship at birth through my Canadian dad. But anyway, I lived in Alberta for about 9 months after I finished my BA and before I moved to the Netherlands to start my MA. I figured if I didn't get accepted to my master's program I'd just settle there permanently. I'd say it was a mixed bag. I had a bit of trouble finding work at first and eventually settled on a rather crappy job doing landscaping and snow shoveling, so that wasn't great. However, I also lived near my dad's side of the family who I didn't get to see very often throughout my childhood. I'd say it was worth it to get to celebrate Canadian Thanksgiving and Christmas with them. I also love the scenery in AB. I will definitely consider settling down permanently in Canada once I'm finished with school, but it all comes down to where I can find work. I've been in Vancouver since 2008. Moved for grad school, and I'm now a Canadian permanent resident with wife and job and life here. I actually feel more American living here, and I'm quicker to defend some of America's actions than I was when I lived in the US. Given the last several years, I am feeling much more politically motivated than previously and I'm a bit sad that I'm not living in the US. To become more involved beyond financial contributions. Thankfully, I can still donate money to politicians that I believe in, such a rare occurrence. I'm also feeling a bit guilty about not being as engaged as I should be with issues here. In Canada, there's certainly enough crap here that needs attention as well. The situation in the US just feels so out of control. That's where most of my attention goes. Don't worry, you're just another Canadian who spends more time worrying about American politics than our own. Everything is great, the people are more accepting, and healthcare is stupid easy to get and pay for. The downside is Uncle Sam still wants a cut of my paycheck. I have yet to actually owe anything to the IRS since I moved, because I don't earn more than the foreign income exclusion, but I still have to file complicated taxes, and I'd be paying taxes to a government who doesn't give me a representative in Congress. So it's funny you mentioned this. I actually moved to Vancouver, BC but work in a place called Point Roberts, Washington. Look it up, it's funny. I enjoy my time in Vancouver, the friends that I have, the cultural events, how vibrant this place can be, etc. For me personally, the cost is reasonable too as I get paid in USD and all my expenses are in CAD. It makes for a cheap place to live compared to my Canadian friends. I do the commute to Point Roberts daily and work there. So on one hand, all my expenses tend to be in CAD, and my income in USD. It makes a very ideal situation. I'm hoping to buy property here in Point Roberts soon, and hopefully call this place home. I love Vancouver and Canada with all my heart. However, when it comes to economic opportunities, the US is ahead of its game and is the best place for business. I moved to Montreal to go to university in 2016, and I'm now transitioning into a work permit. I love it here. The United States feels so intense compared to here. There's so much pressure there, while here, people my age are far more relaxed and focused on enjoying themselves and doing the best they can, yet being able to forgive themselves for their failures. Also, I'm gay, so the social infrastructure is way more beneficial to me personally. I'm probably not moving back to the US anytime soon, but I do miss having access to the same quality and quantity of goods services. Here, places close at relatively odd times, and the closest thing to 24/7 Walmarts or Myers are small pharmacies or convenience stores. Everything commercial feels like a bit of a downgrade. Also, my experience with the medical care is okay. I didn't need to wait as long for specialized doctors in the US, though I lived in a very small city. Here, I had some pelvic pain and the doctor referred me to get an ultrasound, which would take 3 months, or I could pay $300 for a private clinic to conduct one. I didn't want to pay $300, so I waited, but after 2 months the source of the pain was revealed as a cyst that burst, and I had to be hospitalized overnight because there was so much bleeding. I didn't pay a dime, but the hospital was a different experience to those in the US. Like, I had to wait in a big waiting room in excruciating pain for 3 hours while they tried to organize an ultrasound. I didn't get a bed or anything until they found out how much blood I was losing. Then they gave me a recliner to sit in that was still in a big waiting area with lots of other lounge chairs around. Didn't get my own room until I had to spend the night. I'm not complaining, but in the US, it would have been a pretty different experience. And, the taxes are insanely high. Overall, 7/10. Also, there totally is Walmart Myers style stores, just not downtown Montreal near McGill or Concordia, assuming where you live. And yeah, taxes are high in Quebec, but annual tuition for the top school in the country for in province is less than $5,000. Trade-offs. American to Montreal here. Diversification is amazing. All races are more accepted here. The melting pot here is a true one, though you always get a bit here and there. The health system is much lower in quality, but at least it's complimentary. My daughter is not of school age, but from what I see so far, as long as she works hard, she'll be whatever she wants without the heavy burden of school loans I've acquired as an American. Education here is earned, not bought like the US. Coming from NYC, stress level is a lot lower from day to day, and one thing I noticed moving here is they don't sell fear on TV as much as the States. I feel it's a method to drive economy in the US. One thing I truly hate about Montreal is their roads. Most third world countries have better. Moved from OK to Alberta, Canada 2 years ago. Things I have learned. 1. People are just like everywhere else. Some are great and some aren't. Just people in general. 2. Food will taste different to start but grows on you. 3. Poutinas everywhere. It's pretty great. 4. Be prepared for cold. If you are going alone, make sure you ask around before purchasing winter clothing. There's an art to it. 5. Healthcare is incredible. The 8th of May 2010 would recommend if you want a new challenge in life. It's lovely. I'm just having a few adjustment issues to the social etiquette here, as I am from somewhere where it's not totally normal to just start a super peppy conversation with someone else taking their trash out. Been in Vancouver 7 years. 10/10 would move again. Immigrating was a freaking nightmare, but worth it. I thought we were environment conscious in California, but I was wrong. People actually recycle here like they care about the planet, and I love it. Still some buttholes, but those are everywhere. Don't love all the bikers though. I've been run into twice. Once on the sidewalk and once in the crosswalk. I moved here 3 years ago as of July. For a while it was really hit or miss for me. For a long time I really struggled after my move here due to mental health issues. The worst job I've ever received. being so far away from family, etc. Since I left the horrible job, my mental health has improved drastically and I've come to really appreciate some parts of Canada. The cons are that shopping and the shopping experience are way worse. Everything is expensive, poorly stocked, cared for. People have no etiquette, especially compared to my southern experience growing up. No variety, etc. Because the country is far less litigious. Places like my previous workplace can thrive. It is a place that preys on immigrants, like myself, and uses inexperience to bully, overwork, and torment employees, who are left feeling helpless with no alternatives. In the States, half the douchebaggery of the president of the company would have been dealt with ages ago, especially the verbal abuse. Coming from a high-paying corporate job to my previous workplace makes the contrast even more striking. Otherwise the country is nice. I will always hold a bias for where I came from, but I moved up here to be with the one I love and I'm happy with him. The summers are beautiful, the city I'm in is clean, plenty to do, etc. I'd rate the move 7 out of 10. Not perfect, but certainly nice. Moved to Toronto from Los Angeles 3ish years ago. My wife and I did go to Germany for 7 months in between but returned to Toronto. I found traffic is better than LA, but the I-405 and the 401 are basically identical highways traffic wise. My wife was injured by a driver here and had an ankle injury. Separate from that, we paid under $1,000 when she had a head injury and stayed overnight in a hospital here because we were not covered by their government insurance yet. We just got our PR cards, so now we have OHIP cards, which is the insurance up here that is covered by taxes. There is much more park space here than in LA. We would of course hike in the canyons, but Toronto right downtown has a huge ravine system running through it. Toronto basically has everything you'd want. And yeah, it's cold, but it's less cold than North Dakota or Wisconsin and as cold as New York City or Boston. My wife and I are now buying a second property in the countryside here. We spent some time just east of Toronto and what a cozy quaint little place Picton, Ontario is. Picton is a wonderful little town. Twice a year I travel back to go to a drag race they hold at the airport. My hometown is Trenton Belleville area, though live out west now. It's basically like America, but with all the things I hate about America gone. The handful that remain aren't as bad. I'm glad I left and I don't ever intend to live in the US unless the unlikely event of my permanent residency application failing happens. Luckily my mom married a Canadian and we all moved to Canada from Michigan when I was 9. I love Canada and never have any desire to move back to the US. I remember thinking that where I lived in Michigan wasn't racist and was a nice place, but I was so wrong and could see the glaring differences even at 9 years old. Canada seemed exceptionally progressive and no one seemed to even acknowledge race, and there really didn't seem to be strife between communities. It really made every awful, backwards logic stick out when visiting the US, like glaring racism even in the 90s. I moved there and then moved back. Actually lived in both Vancouver and Montreal. After a while, I missed Americans and the quality of goods and services that we have access to here. So I'm likely in the US for good now. It seemed like a lot of stuff there was slightly crappier, often more expensive versions of what we have here. But now that I'm in the US, I miss the nature of BC and a few friends, but no real desire to go back to live. Don't forget that the Canadian dollar is worth less than the American, so it would make sense that things cost more Canadian dollars than American dollars, though the value might be the same. Americans who actually moved to Canada. How do I move to Canada? I'm not a teacher, doctor, or anybody important, I guess. I work on cars for a living but always entertained the idea. We moved because our dad wanted to live closer to his mom. 9/10. The most obvious difference was that no one shouted racist things or threw water bottles at us from their cars. Now the problem with cars is how garbage everyone is at driving, but hey, it isn't malicious. I stay in Canada for a couple months and in the States for a couple months. I love it there. I'm dating someone there. I like the people, the culture, the acceptance. As in, I never really get stared at for being in an interracial relationship there, while I do in the US, except maybe SoCal. And yes, I do get uncomfortable stares frequently in NYC. The downside is my American job pays well into the 6 figures. The same job in Canada pays half as much. I refuse to take a 50% pay cut, which means I have to stay at my job, and they want me back in NYLA every couple of weeks. So, yeah, if the jobs in Canada pays just as much, I would move there in a heartbeat. Move to be with my husband. Drivers aren't as rude. Healthcare is affordable, although the wait times are ridiculous. Less transphobia, homophobia, even though we still get comments every now and again about two guys raising kids, but it isn't as bad as where I was. My wife is Canadian. I'm an American. Currently in the army where my healthcare, and hers, is fully paid for. Finishing my contract this fall, and we're torn on which nation to settle in after. At least while we attend university, I'll still have VA benefits, plus the GI Bill to pay for school and the majority of our living expenses, but it kinda leaves her out for healthcare coverage. Not sure how we can handle that if we stay stateside, like buy insurance, or since she's planning to do a lot less school than me, she could rely on her employer soon. But before then, while we're studying, she would have to rely on Medicare, right? Should add, she just got her US permanent residency, a good 8-month process in our case, and we're not sure about heading back to Canada and having to redo the immigration for me. I lived there for a few years, but back when I was a minor, and my parents bought a business there, graduated high school and wanted to stand on my own legs, so I left Canada for the US Army. Met her on leave because her folks and mine go to the same church. Medicare is mostly for senior citizens. Medicaid is for the extremely poor. What you would probably have to do is purchase a healthcare plan through Obamacare. I lived in the GTA for 2 years for a temporary work assignment. I grew up and live in the Northeast, so I found the values, more liberal, to be the same as the version of the US I'm from. I'm also used to the cold, so it was a non-issue. If I were moving from the deep south, I could see where it would be night and day, both socially and climate-wise. Healthcare is great if you don't have good insurance in the US. For routine non-emergency stuff there's a bit of a wait though. Also a heads up that dental and prescriptions do in fact cost a bit of money up there. I have good cheap insurance in the States, so it wasn't life-changing. Cost of living is higher. Taxes, housing, day-to-day expenses, wages are generally lower, so I was particularly baffled by how people made it work. At least in Toronto. I enjoyed the people and my time there. I had the option to stay longer but moved back because I missed home and all the stuff that comes with it. I'll add as a final note that you just can't up and move to Canada on a whim. So find someone to marry or a job that will relocate if it's really a life goal. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.